The day Earth's reality shattered began like any other. Dr. Sarah Chen sipped her coffee, squinting at the computer screens that lined her lab at the SETI Institute. For years, she had searched the cosmos for signs of extraterrestrial life, hoping for a whisper from the stars. Today, she got a shout. At precisely 9:17 a.m., every electronic device on the planet crackled to life with an otherworldly static. Phones, computers, even old tube TVs in junkyards lit up with the same message. Humans of Earth, heed our warning. Your worlds will burn. Sarah's coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. Her heart raced as she read the words scrolling across her screen. Part of her, the scientist who had devoted her life to this very moment, felt a surge of vindication and excitement. They weren't alone in the universe, but a colder, primal fear gripped her stomach. This was no friendly greeting. As the message repeated in every language known to man, Sarah's phone buzzed. It was a call from the president's office. Her hand shook as she answered. "Dr. Chen," a stern voice said, "we need you in Washington. Now." Across the globe, panic erupted. In New York's Times Square, the giant screens blazed with the alien message. Crowds gathered, some falling to their knees in prayer, others arguing loudly about government conspiracies. A street preacher with wild eyes shouted about the end times, his voice barely audible over the din. In a small town in Kansas, farmers gathered around the only TV in Joe's diner. "Reckon we should have built that fallout shelter after all, eh, Joe?" Old Tom chuckled nervously, trying to mask his fear with humor. Joe just shook his head, eyes glued to the screen. World leaders scrambled to convene an emergency meeting. In London, the Prime Minister was rushed from his morning tea to a waiting helicopter. In Beijing, the President canceled all appointments, his usually stoic face betraying a flicker of worry. As Air Force One soared over the American heartland, President Jane Martinez stared out the window. The patchwork of farms and towns below seemed so peaceful, so unaware of the cosmic threat looming above. She thought of her children, safely hidden away in a secure location, and steeled herself for the challenges ahead. In the White House Situation Room, tension crackled like electricity. Military generals with chests full of medals argued strategy, their voices rising with each passing minute. The Secretary of Defense wanted to ready the nuclear arsenal. The Secretary of State urged caution and diplomacy. "Gentlemen, please." President Martinez's voice cut through the chaos. Despite the gravity of the situation, a wry smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Let's not start World War III before the aliens have a chance to annihilate us, shall we?" Her gallows humor did little to lighten the mood, but it brought a moment of silence. Into that silence walked Dr. Sarah Chen, escorted by Secret Service agents. All eyes turned to her. "Dr. Chen," the president said, "I think it's safe to say your services are needed now more than ever. What can you tell us about this message?" Sarah swallowed hard, feeling the weight of expectation. "Madam President, distinguished leaders, the truth is, we know very little. The signal's origin is like nothing we've ever seen. It seems to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at once." A general scoffed. "Fat lot of good your stargazing has done us, then." The president silenced him with a look. "Go on, doctor." "What I can tell you is this," Sarah continued, her voice gaining strength. "The level of technology required to send this message is, well, it's beyond our comprehension. We're dealing with a civilization far more advanced than our own." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Meanwhile, outside the walls of power, the world grappled with this new reality. In Rio de Janeiro, crowds flocked to the Christ, the Redeemer statue, singing hymns and seeking solace. In Tokyo, technology addicts furiously typed on forums, sharing conspiracy theories and survival plans. On a farm in Australia, a family sat around their kitchen table, the father trying to explain to his wide-eyed children why the sheep were still safe even though aliens might be coming. "But Dad," his youngest asked, "will the aliens eat the sheep?" In a New Delhi slum, A group of children played aliens and humans, giggling as they chased each other through narrow alleys, blissfully unaware of the real danger looming above. Back in Washington, Dr. Chen worked tirelessly, her eyes red from staring at screens. She muttered to herself, scribbling equations and diagrams. A young aide brought her coffee, his hand shaking slightly as he set down the mug. "Do you think?" he started, then hesitated. Sarah looked up, seeing the fear in his eyes. "Do you think we have a chance?" Sarah paused, choosing her words carefully. "I think," she said slowly, "that humanity has faced impossible odds before. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and our own destructive nature. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." The aide nodded, seeming to draw strength from her words. As he left, Sarah turned back to her work, pushing down her own doubts and fears. She had to believe what she'd said. The alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. As the first day of this new era drew to a close, billions of people looked to the sky with a mix of wonder and fear. The stars, once a source of beauty and mystery, now held a new menace. Yet in living rooms and bars, in places of worship and places of science, people came together. They shared their fears, their hopes, and their determination to face whatever came next. In the White House, President Martinez stood at a window, watching the sun set on a world forever changed. Tomorrow, she would address the nation, trying to calm a panicked populace. But tonight, she allowed herself a moment of vulnerability, a single tear sliding down her cheek. The earth had received its warning. Now, all of humanity held its breath, waiting to see if their worlds would indeed burn. The world awoke to its second day under the shadow of alien threat, a fitful and restless global slumber giving way to the harsh light of a new reality. As the sun crept over the horizon, bringing with it not warmth but a chill of apprehension, humanity's reprieve came to an abrupt end. At precisely 8:00 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, every screen on Earth flickered to life once more. The message that appeared sent a collective shudder through the human race. "People of Earth, your time grows short. You have 72 hours to surrender your world. Resist, and you will burn." In the Oval Office, President Jane Martinez sat surrounded by her top advisors, their faces ashen as they absorbed the ultimatum. The room, usually a bastion of power and control, now felt suffocating, the weight of billions of lives pressing down on every occupant. "Well," President Martinez said, breaking the heavy silence, "I don't know about you folks, but I'm not quite ready to hand over the keys to the planet. Anyone know if the aliens accept returns? Maybe we could offer them Pluto instead." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. The president's gallows humor, a trademark of her leadership style, offered a brief respite from the crushing gravity of their situation. But the levity was short-lived as reality reasserted itself. Madam President, General Hawthorne, a gruff, no-nonsense military man, spoke up. "We need to strike now, while we still can. A preemptive nuclear assault might be our only chance." Secretary of State Elaine Foster leaped to her feet. "Are you insane? We're talking about a civilization capable of sending messages to every device on the planet simultaneously. Do you really think our missiles would even scratch their ships?" As the room erupted into heated debate, Dr. Sarah Chen sat quietly, her mind racing. She had spent the night poring over the alien transmissions, searching for any clue, any weakness they could exploit. Now, listening to the arguments flying back and forth, she felt a growing sense of frustration. "Enough," she shouted, surprising even herself with the force of her outburst. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to her. "Fighting amongst ourselves is exactly what they want. We need to focus on understanding their technology. That's our best chance." President Martinez nodded slowly. "Dr. Chen is right. We need more information." "Doctor, what have you learned?" Sarah took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts. "The transmission method is like nothing we've ever seen. It's not using any known form of electromagnetic radiation. It's as if they're tapping into the very fabric of space-time itself. She paused, noting the blank looks on many faces. In simpler terms, imagine if you could instantly send a letter to every mailbox in the world without using any mail carriers or even the mail system itself. That's what they're doing, but with information. The implications sank in. How could they fight an enemy with such advanced technology? As the meeting in Washington continued, the world outside grappled with the ultimatum. In London's Trafalgar Square, a spontaneous vigil formed, thousands of candles flickering in the early morning light as people sought comfort in unity. In the markets of Marrakesh, usually bustling with life, an eerie quiet had settled, broken only by the occasional wail of despair. In a small village in the Amazon rainforest, untouched by modern technology, an indigenous elder gazed at the sky, sensing a shift in the very air around them. He gathered his people, preparing ancient rituals to appease whatever new gods had arrived. Back in her lab, Dr. Chen worked feverishly, her team pushing the boundaries of human knowledge in a desperate race against time. Cups of cold coffee littered the desks, testament to their sleepless dedication. Dr. Chen, a young researcher, called out, excitement breaking through his exhaustion. "I think we found something." Sarah rushed over, her heart pounding. On the screen was a pattern, barely perceptible in the noise of the alien transmission. But it was there, a weakness, a flaw in their seemingly perfect technology. As Sarah's team celebrated their small victory, across the globe, others prepared for the worst. Military bases hummed with activity, soldiers saying goodbye to loved ones as they deployed to strategic locations. In Switzerland, the entrance to a massive underground bunker opened for the first time since the Cold War, ready to shelter a select few should the worst come to pass. In New York City, a group of Broadway performers gathered in Times Square, their voices rising in a defiant chorus of "New York, New York." The impromptu concert drew crowds, tears mixing with determined smiles as people found solace in the familiar melody. As the first day of the ultimatum drew to a close, President Martinez stood before a bank of cameras, ready to address a frightened world. She thought of her children, of all the children across the globe, and steeled herself. "My fellow citizens of Earth," she began, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. "We face a threat unlike any in human history. But I stand before you today not in fear, but in hope." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room and beyond, to the billions watching. Hope, because in the face of this challenge, I have seen humanity at its best. Scientists working tirelessly for solutions, neighbors helping neighbors, strangers comforting strangers. We may have our differences, but in this moment, we are one people, one planet. As her words echoed across the globe, a sense of unity began to take hold. In refugee camps and penthouses, in temples and laboratories, people listened, drawing strength from her resolve. "We will not surrender," Martins continued, her voice rising with emotion. "We will stand together, and together we will find a way." As night fell once more, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter. Humanity had received its ultimatum, but it had also found its voice. With 48 hours left on the alien clock, the race to save Earth continued, fueled by the indomitable spirit of a species that refused to go quietly into the night. In her lab, Dr. Chen looked up from her work, a glimmer of hope in her tired eyes. Perhaps, just perhaps, they had found the key to humanity's survival. But as the alien deadline loomed ever closer, one question remained: would it be enough? As the second day of Earth's ultimatum dawned, Dr. Sarah Chen rubbed her bleary eyes, the soft glow of computer screens casting an eerie light across her face. For 36 hours straight, she and her team had worked tirelessly, fueled by a potent mixture of caffeine, fear, and determination. The weight of humanity's fate pressed down on their shoulders, a constant reminder of the ticking clock. Suddenly, a burst of static erupted from the lab speakers. Sarah's head snapped up, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. The static cleared, replaced by a voice unlike any she had ever heard. A melodious yet oddly dissonant sound that seemed to resonate in her very bones. "Hello? Is this thing on? Earth scientist, can you hear me?" Sarah's jaw dropped. She fumbled for the microphone, her hands shaking. "Ah, yes, I can hear you. Who is this?" A sound like chiming crystals filled the air. Was that laughter? "The name's Zax. I'm what you might call a concerned party. Let's just say I'm not thrilled with my species' idea of interplanetary relations." Sarah's mind raced. An alien, contacting her directly, and one that seemed to be on their side. "Why are you helping us?" she asked, suspicion warring with desperate hope. "Let's just say I've got a soft spot for underdogs," Zax replied, a hint of sarcasm in his otherworldly voice. "Plus, between you and me, the guys in charge up here, total buzzkills, no sense of humor whatsoever." Despite the gravity of the situation, Sarah found herself smiling. An alien with a sense of humor, who would have thought? As Sarah and Zax spoke, trading information and quips in equal measure, word of the unexpected contact spread like wildfire. Within hours, President Martinez was informed, and an emergency meeting convened. "Can we trust this?" "Zax," General Hawthorne growled, his bushy eyebrows furrowed in suspicion. President Martinez leaned back in her chair, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Can we afford not to?" she countered. "We're running out of options and time." The room erupted into heated debate. Trust an alien. It seemed absurd. And yet, the alternative, facing the full might of an advanced alien civilization with no help, seemed even more hopeless. As the arguments raged on, President Martinez closed her eyes, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. In her mind's eye, she saw the faces of her children, of all the children of Earth, their futures hanging in the balance. She took a deep breath and opened her eyes, her decision made. "We'll work with Zax," she announced, her voice cutting through the clamor. "But we'll proceed with caution. Dr. Chen, you'll be our primary point of contact. Keep me informed of every development." Across the globe, as news of the alien defector spread, reactions were mixed. In Tokyo, tech enthusiasts celebrated, convinced that alien technology would usher in a new golden age. In Vatican City, the Pope called for calm and understanding, reminding his flock that all of God's creatures, even those from beyond the stars, deserved compassion. In a small pub in Dublin, a group of friends raised their pints in a toast to Zax. They cheered, laughing. May his beer never be flat, and his tentacles never tangle. Back in her lab, Sarah worked feverishly with Zax, piecing together the alien technology puzzle. Zax's insights were invaluable, but his constant quips and pop culture references, how did he even know about Earth movies, were both endearing and maddening. "You know," Zax said casually as they worked on decrypting the alien fleet's communication protocols, "you humans remind me of those little fuzzy creatures from that movie. Star battles. Wars of the Stars." Sarah couldn't help but laugh. "Star Wars. And which creatures?" "Ewoks." "That's it," Zax exclaimed. "Ewoks. Small, seemingly harmless, but surprisingly resourceful, though I must say you're a bit less furry." As they bantered, a plan began to take shape, a daring, perhaps foolhardy plan, but one that just might save humanity. Meanwhile, in living rooms and town squares across the world, people gathered, drawn together by a mixture of fear and hope. Families huddled close, cherishing what might be their last moments together. But there was defiance too, a stubborn refusal to go quietly into the night. In New York's Central Park, a spontaneous concert erupted, thousands of voices joining together in a chorus of Imagine. In Rio de Janeiro, the Christ the Redeemer statue was lit up in a dazzling display of colors, a beacon of hope visible for miles around. As the second day of the ultimatum drew to a close, President Martinez once again addressed the world. Her face was tired, etched with the strain of sleepless nights and impossible decisions, but her eyes burned with determination. "My fellow citizens of Earth," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I stand before you today with news that may seem impossible, even in these extraordinary times. We have made contact with an alien being who wishes to help us." A collective gasp seemed to echo around the globe. "I know this may be difficult to believe," Martinez continued, "but in this moment of crisis, we must be open to allies wherever we find them. We have a plan, a chance to save our world. It will be dangerous, and success is not guaranteed. But we will not go gently into that good night. We will rage against the dying of the light." As Martinez's words rang out, a spark of hope ignited in hearts around the world. In war-torn regions, long-standing enemies looked at each other with new eyes, united by a common threat. In scientific laboratories, researchers redoubled their efforts, energized by the possibility of alien insights. And in her lab, Dr. Sarah Chen looked up at the stars visible through her window. Somewhere up there was Zax, an unlikely ally in a cosmos that had suddenly become much larger and stranger than she had ever imagined. Ready for the next phase. Zax's voice crackled through the speakers. Sarah took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "Ready as we'll ever be," she replied. As the final day of the ultimatum dawned, humanity stood on the brink, with an alien armada poised to attack and a rogue extraterrestrial as their only ally. The next 24 hours would determine the fate of Earth. The stage was set for a confrontation that would echo through the ages, if there were any ages left to come. The final day of Earth's ultimatum arrived with a sky that seemed to burn crimson, as if the atmosphere itself was anticipating the potential devastation to come. In military bases around the world, pilots climbed into their jets, their hands steady despite the enormity of the task ahead. Among them was Captain Alex Ramos, known as the best pilot in the Air Force, his cocky grin masking the fear that churned in his gut. "All right, ladies and gentlemen." Alex addressed his squadron, his voice carrying a forced bravado. "Today, we're not just flyboys and girls. We're humanity's last line of defense. Let's show these aliens why you don't mess with Earth." A cheer went up, a defiant roar against the looming threat above. As the pilots rushed to their aircraft, Alex paused, looking at a photo taped to his cockpit. His daughter smiled back at him, her gap-toothed grin a reminder of everything at stake. Meanwhile, in her lab, Dr. Sarah Chen worked feverishly alongside her unlikely alien ally, Zax. Holographic displays flickered around them, showing complex equations and diagrams that would have been incomprehensible just days ago. "You know," Zax quipped, his crystalline voice tinged with what Sarah had come to recognize as anxiety. "When I decided to help you humans, I didn't expect it to involve possibly blowing up my own species' mothership." Sarah managed a tight smile. "Having second thoughts?" "Nah," Zax replied, his form shimmering slightly. "I've always had a flair for the dramatic. Though I have to say, your Earth movies make this hero stuff look a lot easier." Their banter was interrupted by a call from President Martinez. "Dr. Chen, Zax," she said, her face grim on the video screen. "It's time. Are you ready?" Sarah and Zax exchanged glances. "As ready as we'll ever be, Madam President," Sarah replied. Across the globe, humanity held its breath. In Times Square, thousands gathered, eyes fixed on the giant screens that would broadcast the unfolding battle. In the Australian outback, Aboriginal elders performed ancient rituals, their chants rising to the sky. In the Vatican, the Pope led a massive prayer vigil, the square filled with flickering candles and whispered hopes. High above the Earth, the alien armada shimmered into view, their massive ships seeming to distort the very fabric of space around them. On screens worldwide, gasps of awe and terror echoed as humanity got its first glimpse of the threat they faced. "All wings, report in." Alex's voice crackled over the radio as Earth's fighters rose to meet the challenge. "Red 2, standing by." Blue leader, ready to kick some alien butt. Green squad, let's show 'em what Earth is made of. As the fighters streaked towards the alien ships, Dr. Chen and Zax initiated their plan. Using the flaw they had discovered in the alien transmission technology, they began broadcasting a signal designed to disrupt the invaders' systems. It's working, Sarah exclaimed, watching as the alien ships began to falter. Their shields are weakening. But the aliens were quick to adapt. Beams of energy lanced out from their ships, vaporizing Earth fighters in blinding flashes of light. We're getting slaughtered up here, Alex shouted, his jet rolling to avoid enemy fire. We need something more. In the White House Situation Room, President Martinez watched the battle unfold, her knuckles white, as she gripped the edge of the table. Dr. Chen, we need that weakness exploited now. Sarah's fingers flew over her keyboard, sweat beading on her brow. We're trying, but their adaptive algorithms are incredibly advanced. Zax, we need. She turned to find Zax's holographic form flickering violently. Zax, what's happening? They've found me, Zax managed, his voice distorted. Trying to sever my connection. Sarah, you need to. With a burst of static, Zax disappeared. No, Sarah cried, her heart plummeting. Their alien ally, their ace in the hole, was gone. Above, the battle raged on. Alex's squadron, now reduced to a handful of fighters, darted between the massive alien ships, their missiles seemingly harmless against the invaders' technology. This is it, Alex thought, gritting his teeth as he lined up another shot. This is how it ends. But in that moment of despair, something extraordinary happened. All across the Earth, from the largest cities to the smallest villages, a surge of energy began to build. The countless screens and devices that had broadcast the alien ultimatum now pulsed with a different kind of power. The collective will of humanity. In her lab, Sarah watched in awe as her instruments registered the phenomenon. Somehow, the fear, hope, and determination of billions of humans were being channeled through the very network the aliens had used to threaten them. Of course, she whispered, a spark of hope igniting in her chest. It's not just about the technology. It's about the connection. Her fingers flew across the keyboard once more, but this time she wasn't just inputting code. She was channeling the spirit of humanity itself. In space, Alex watched in disbelief as his weapons suddenly began to penetrate the alien shields. I don't know what you did, Doc, he shouted into his radio. But keep it up. The tide of battle began to turn. One by one, the alien ships faltered, their once impenetrable defenses crumbling under the combined assault of human technology and will. As the last alien ship fell, a cheer rose from every corner of the Earth. In the streets, strangers embraced, tears of joy mixing with cries of triumph. In the White House, President Martinez slumped in her chair, a mix of relief and disbelief on her face. And in her lab, Dr. Sarah Chen allowed herself a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had prevailed. But as the initial euphoria began to fade, Sarah's thoughts turned to Zax. What had happened to their alien ally? And what would this victory mean for Earth's place in a suddenly much larger and more dangerous universe? As the sun set on a day that would be forever etched in human history, these questions and more hung in the air. The battle was won, but the true challenge, navigating a new era of cosmic awareness, was just beginning. The dawn broke on a changed world. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the smoky haze left by the battle, humanity emerged from shelters and homes, blinking in disbelief at the new reality. They had faced extinction and survived. The impossible had happened. Earth had won. In Washington, D.C., President Jane Martinez stood before a sea of reporters, the weight of sleepless nights evident in the dark circles under her eyes, but a fierce pride shining in her gaze. The world held its breath as she stepped up to the microphone. My fellow citizens of Earth, she began, her voice steady and clear. Today, we stand united not just as Americans, Russians, Chinese, or Brazilians, but as Earthlings. We have faced the greatest threat in our planet's history, and we have prevailed. Cheers erupted from the crowd, echoed by millions watching around the globe. But our victory came at a great cost. Martins continued, her tone somber. We've lost brave men and women who gave their lives to protect our world. Their sacrifice will never be forgotten. In a small town in Kansas, a mother clutched a folded flag to her chest, tears streaming down her face as she listened to the president's words. Her son, a young pilot, had not returned from the battle. Yet in our darkest hour, we discovered something remarkable. Martinez went on, a hint of wonder in her voice. We found strength not just in our weapons or technology, but in our unity. The power of our collective will, our shared hope and determination, became the key to our salvation. In New York's Central Park, a spontaneous celebration had broken out. People of all ages, races, and backgrounds danced together, their joy a testament to the president's words. And we found that even among those we thought were our enemies, there can be allies, Martinez added. To the being known as Zax, wherever you are, we owe you a debt of gratitude. You reminded us that compassion and understanding can bridge even the vast gulfs between the stars. In her lab, Dr. Sarah Chen listened to the speech, her heart swelling with emotion. She thought of Zax, hoping against hope that their alien friend had somehow survived. As if in answer to her thoughts, a familiar static crackled through her speakers. "Did you miss me, Doc?" Zax's crystalline voice filled the room. Sarah let out a cry of joy. "Zax, you're alive. But how?" "Let's just say I'm harder to get rid of than your Earth cockroaches," Zax quipped. "Though I have to admit, that was a close call. You humans sure know how to throw a party." As Sarah laughed, tears of relief streaming down her face, she realized that this was more than just a reunion. It was the beginning of a new chapter in human history. Over the following weeks, the world began the process of rebuilding and adapting to its new reality. The wreckage of alien ships became the subject of intense study, yielding technological advances that would have seemed like magic just months before. But more than that, the shared experience of facing annihilation had profoundly changed humanity. Old conflicts and divisions began to fade as people realized the insignificance of their differences in the face of the vast cosmos. In a historic session of the United Nations, world leaders signed the Earth Unity Accord, pledging to work together to advance human civilization and prepare for future encounters with alien life. Dr. Sarah Chen, hailed as one of the heroes of the alien crisis, found herself at the forefront of a new era of scientific discovery. With Zax's help, she led a team dedicated to understanding and adapting alien technology for peaceful purposes. One evening, as she stood on the roof of her lab gazing at the stars, Zax's holographic form shimmered into view beside her. "Penny for your thoughts," he asked, his tone uncharacteristically serious. Sarah smiled. "I was just thinking about how much has changed. A few months ago, we thought we were alone in the universe. Now the possibilities seem endless." Zax nodded, or at least made a motion that Sarah interpreted as a nod. "You humans continue to surprise me. Most species, after an experience like yours, would close themselves off, build walls. But you're reaching out to the stars with open arms." "Well," Sarah replied with a grin, "we've got a pretty good alien ambassador to help us navigate the cosmic waters." As they shared a laugh, a shooting star streaked across the sky. Once, Sarah might have made a wish. Now she wondered if it was a ship carrying new friends or foes from distant worlds. The threat had passed, but the adventure was just beginning. Humanity had taken its first, stumbling steps into a larger universe. There would be challenges ahead, new dangers and wonders beyond imagination. But as Sarah looked up at the vast expanse of space, she felt not fear, but excitement. The worlds that had been threatened with burning now shone with the light of possibility, and humanity, tested by fire, had emerged stronger, more united, and ready to take its place among the stars. As the night deepened, Sarah and Zax continued their vigil, a human and an alien, united in friendship and shared purpose. Above them, the Milky Way sprawled across the sky, no longer a distant, unreachable realm, but a cosmic neighborhood waiting to be explored. The dawn of a new era had truly begun, and the future, vast and unknown, beckoned with infinite promise.